beginning what I'm going to call a Tuesday tour. An idea that on a reasonably regular basis will give you a tour of some part of the church building while it's closed, just to see the different areas of the church and learn something about them. But first of all, what we're looking at here is the Gascoigne building. But once upon a time, that was the rectory of Oundle, and the rector of Oundle lived there. There would have been lands associated with it which brought in income for the rector of Oundle, who would have been the priest who looked after the parish. But in 1481, the abbey at Peterborough, which is now the cathedral but was then an abbey, purchased the rights to the rectory, which meant that all the land and the income that came from it went to the abbey. And what they then did was they appointed a vicar, somebody to do the job of the rector vicariously on an income, which is why it's called a vicar. And so this stopped being the rectory in 1481, became a house that the abbey at Peterborough could put somebody into, and the vicarage, which was the vicarage until 2014, which is on New Street, became the house for the vicar. But about the same time, they built onto the side of St. Peter's Church this building. And so if you look at the end of the church, you can see that there is a house that was added to the side of the church building around about 1481, presumably for a priest to live in. Perhaps somebody who was sent from the abbey in Peterborough to take some of the services, and a little house to live in. And you can see that it was just built onto the east end of St. Peter's Church. And there we have it. And so we're going to look inside that house to what is what we now call the upper room. And so we're going to go in through this old north door. This little bit here was built on in the 1990s, I believe, to give a little galley, a sink. This door here was added in the 18th century and is an 18th century entrance. Here would have been outside originally, and as we go through here we're entering that little house that we saw from the outside, and you can see where they built it onto the side of the church. This is the door into the chancel. So through here you can see the chancel with the communion table and the east window. This is where the house was built on the side. And you can see this here was the sailing course, which is when the rain came down the outside of the building down here. That was to project it away from the ground, I believe. And there you can see what would have been an external window into the chancel, and this would have been outside. So we're going upstairs in that little house that we saw built on the outside of the church in about 1481. And here we are in the upper room. That would have been originally, this would have been a window right outside with just fresh air. In the 15th century, that would have been the window into this little room. And then in the 17th century, they added some glass windows to make it a more comfortable living space. It was a little room that was ensuite, and so we've got an ensuite toilet here. This is called a garderobe, which is another word for a medieval toilet. And there you have the long drop loo where the priest would be. It was called a garderobe because the person who lived here would store their robes in the little toilet closet. You'd think, why on earth would you do that? Well, apparently the one place the moths wouldn't go was somewhere where the priest kept his cloak. And so it was a garderobe that looked after the robes. And not a very nice thought, but that's how they kept the moths away. As well as that, we also have hidden here where our boiler now is. Just is all a bit tucked behind the boiler now, but around there, in there was the little salt cellar where they would have kept salt. So there we are, a little peek into the upper room at St. Peter's Church. And I thought about showing you the upper room because upper rooms have quite a story, quite a connection with both Easter and Pentecost. in Easter, just before the Last Supper, they retire to an upper room where they have the Last Supper. And then it's in an upper room where the disciples are all gathered on that first Easter day, and again the week later when the risen Jesus appears to them and eats food. And then after the ascension, Jesus goes up the Mount of Olives. He ascends to his Father, and the apostles go back into Jerusalem, and they gather in the upper room, and they pray fervently for 10 days until the day of Pentecost. And so the disciples gathering in this upper room right the way through from Maundy Thursday, right the way through to Easter Day and on to Pentecost. But of course then, after that, they go out after the day of Pentecost to spread the good news of Jesus into all the world. They are released from that upper room, if you like. And at this time when we can't be gathered in our church building, it's good for us to remember that the first Christians had no buildings, that by the Spirit they were sent out into all the world to share the good news of Jesus Christ. And that is what he asks us to do as well. I hope you've enjoyed this first little tour. There'll be more on another day. Bye-bye.